welcoming our panel.
Thank you for talking.
You're welcome, my pleasure.
2000 to 2004.
Yep.
The drama of that length of time, and actually it's your anniversary, isn't it? Was it your anniversary just a couple of weeks ago of entering that whole experience?
5th of June 2000 I came to Australia.
That's right. But the drama of that length of time is something I think that's very hard for an outsider, an observer, to actually integrate in their imagination. And I was trying to think of what I was doing during that time to give it, you know, a sense of reality, of vividness. And I think it's possibly a good idea for all of us to think, what were we doing from June 2000 to August 2004? That was almost the entire secondary school experience of my daughter, I know at the time, all those exams, those holidays and that sort of thing. But you were in that whole range of detention centres. You've seen more of Australia than I have.
Yeah.
It wasn't something you were prepared for, was it? You didn't arrive with a strategy for dealing with this kind of experience.
No, first let me to let everyone know my name when I arrived to Australia is stolen by immigration department, and they gave me a new name. My name was STO32 and also PHO213, and I didn't have name while I was in detention center. I took my name back when I get released from detention center. For the experience, as I said many times, it's not really easy to talk about detention center time in 5, 6, 7, 10 hours. Because every second of detention center goes for more than a day. To see people suffering for no reason, it's hard to even thinking about it. Before I came to Australia, I thought I'm coming to freedom and democracy country. For first year, because we didn't have any connection to Australian people, everybody in Portland Detention Center 2000, they were thinking it's a big racist country because of the treatment from immigration department and security company, which is called ACM.
Now that's where you went. When you first arrived, you had a very particular experience, didn't you? You were put into essentially what was an isolation situation for your small
for
group.
first month, yeah. But after first month, 1 month, we were released to compound, being together with more than 800 people, including women and children.
Of all different backgrounds?
All different
Many languages?
Yeah. From Africa, from Macedonia, from Bosnia, from Russia, from Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, and many more. I don't remember exactly at the moment.
And what sense, when that happened, did you have of what was going to occur to you, what your future would be? Just how in command of your understanding of your situation were you?
As a political activist for a long time, because I've been political activist since 1979, while I was 12 years old back in Iran. I thought this is wrong, to just sitting and waiting for immigration to do whatever they want. We have to send our voice outside, to let people know what's going on inside the reservoir. Because every day we have to see some people get bashed, their arm broken, or for any illness, they give you 2 tablets with 10 cups of water. I remember one of the Palestinian guy, after complaining about his stomach for a long time, finally he died in Perth hospital in 2001.
Because the care was too delayed?
They didn't find out he has a stomach cancer, and they gave him all the time 2 Panadol, 10 cups of water. That was the treatment for every single person. Doesn't matter what age you are, children and adults, same.
So there's a real problem of being able to communicate what's happening to you, but also the other way, also understanding what is being communicated to you by all these different categories of officials, of people that you come across in the detention context.
Yeah.
A problem of mutual comprehension.
Yeah.
And no structure to deal with that.
No. It was really, really hard to deal with anything there. We always focusing for our freedom because we believe nobody inside this razor wire are criminal or done anything wrong.
What sense did you have of the outside world when you were in there? Did you have any sense at all? I'm asking that question with relation to all sorts of
I didn't know anything about outside. I didn't know what Australian people looks like. Okay.
You were initially
Yeah.
in Darwin, then in Port Hedland.
Port Hedland.
Yes.
And then in 2001, when I came to Melbourne, Melbourne, that was 9:30 in the night time. When I get to airport, I asked security guard what city it is, and he said you don't have to know anything because I couldn't see any sign. Just come with us. We went to detention center. I didn't know what detention center is. Was very small. I thought, oh, they brought me here. It's like a home arrest people, home detention. Next day, they called me for visit. I was shocked. Who coming to visit me and they know me? I don't know anybody in Australia. I have no relative, I have no friend, I have no family. And that was a lady called Pamela Kerr. Many people here might be know her. And she was first Australian person I met after more than a year being in detention center.
This is around 18 months of being in a detention center. It was your first encounter with a person who had a kind of beneficent interest in you as a human being.
And that visit, even was short, changed my mind completely about Australian people. Because as I said, before that, we thinking this is big racist country. And then after Pamela Kerr, other people came to visit, and we sent a message actually to other people back in Port Hedland by telephone. And we said, look, this is not the way we're thinking about Australian people. There is a difference between Australian people and Australian government and security company who run the camp.
Just before we move on to the next step from there, can I just go back? How did you maintain your sense of self and your sense of purpose in all that period when you weren't actually engaged in any way with a world outside, and when you're known by a number, you've lost your name, you've come from a history of family and identity, and all that has disappeared in the context of detention for such a long time? How did you maintain that sense of self and that faith that made you keep on going?
Look, when you want to be activist, actually political activist, you have to make yourself your very strong feeling and be very powerful for the way you're going in.
When you speak of political activism, it's a generic thing, but what's underneath it? Is it a sense of justice that's driving you, or a vision of something?
Yeah. First thing for me, it's a human right. Okay? Human right is really important to me, important than anything else, even daily food.
Okay. In that context of detention also, there are all these pressures that you've described, and volumes of people, the pressures of such cultural diversity, of everyone experiencing stress of various kinds. How will you all help to maintain a kind of mental health, to understand what might be happening to you and to look after yourselves mentally, to protect yourselves in that context?
Look, in detention center, the medical system try to keep lots of people quiet with a strong tablet, like nursing-dol, tramadol, and lots of things like that.
So there's no positive engagement with people to deal with the situation?
could organize with some people to make noise, to get involved with media outside and organizing for them to come behind the razor wire and interview people and took photo and make the report for newspaper in Australia and show what exactly inside looks like. That was my job. Part of that, to see, as I said, children crying for very simple things like lollies, ice cream, or toys. Children could see the beach and water, and they wasn't able to touch the water, go into the water. They have to see the water as a big picture from behind the razor wire. It's not easy to see something like that and stay quiet and say, look, I have no eyes, I cannot see anything, I cannot hear. That, plus lots of another things, make me and some other friend to raise the alarm inside detention.
Can I ask you a question about the people you met in the detention centre, the Australians you met? There are many different categories. There's the guards, the private service which runs the detention camps at the time, the immigration officials, they're the lawyers who come in. Did you end up having thoughts about how these people understand themselves according to their professional engagement with you, and, if you like, the way they deal with their situation, the way they may abstract themselves from the encounter they have with all of the detainees?
To describe Australian people, whoever helped us inside, outside, or even whoever thinking about us, as much as it's hard to describe inside detention center, it's hard to describe Australian people as a lovely people. I believe this room is very small for these people here because they have huge personality, and I love them all. Lots of lawyers, lots of nurses. I even had in Melbourne Detention Center private doctor because they didn't send me to doctor for my stomach problem, for my food problem, and some of the lawyers organized with private doctor, Dr. Lightfoot. Few times he came to visit me in Melbourne Detention Center privately. I don't know how to describe this because it's very, very huge thing to me and every single person who was in detention and also still lots of people.
Okay, so just thinking about all the things that you've said, those midnight flights and the shifts here and there and the lack of knowing the number, there just seems to be such a degree of abstractedness and arbitrariness about your experience in the detention system. Even when you left, when you were released, you got your freedom. It was almost casual, wasn't it? There was no apology. All of a sudden, you were just free.
No, it's not apology at all. I remember in Melbourne Detention Center, they called me for immigration visit. I went there and the lady, she came to the room and she said, I came privately to see you from Canberra. I have a message for you, and the message is we're going to give you $2,000 with free ticket to go back to your country. I said, I'm sorry, I thought you coming for apologize from Mr. Radak to me because you keep me here for more than a year at the moment. If you haven't anything like that, I have to go back. Thank you very much. And I wish to not see you again.
I think I could talk to you ask you lots of questions about all these endless questions, but we have limited time. So what I do want to know, Ali, is how did you come across Julian Burnside?
That was a really nice story, part of many horrible story I have. One day in Melbourne Detention Center, they called me for visitor. And that was strange to me because usually a visitor called us and they said, oh, we're coming this time, blah, 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 blah. And I was really scared to go to visit because between few Iranians, they just called me. because immigration, sometimes they deport people like that. I didn't go. 3 times the security guard came and he said, oh, the lady waiting for you, and in our culture it's not really nice if you're not going to see her. Then I said,
So good manners were won out.
yeah. I said to my friend, I'm going to visit. If I didn't come, call the lawyer and say, he's disappeared. I went there, I look at people, I didn't recognize anybody who I know. And the lady, a very lovely lady, she came to me and she said, oh, my name is Kate, my husband, his name is Julian Burnside. He's a lawyer for Tampa ship. Exactly a while ago, before that, the Tampa ship happened. And we find your name in some website and we would like to help you. I accepted because in that time I really need to have a strong lawyer. Actually, your question was a very good question because I never had good time to say thank you to Mr. Burnside for whatever he done. He done a lot, and again, it's not really easy to describe and say anything about it because it's huge help. Thank you.
Ali, thank you very much. You're going to talk some more, I think,
Okay.
but there are many aspects of your experience in detention which we haven't touched, and some of them are absolutely extreme and severe. And maybe Julian can give some sort of sense of that, I think.
I'm sure he can.
Right, so Julian, can you tell us how you met Ali and what the role you played in relation to him?
Actually, I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure that what he said is pretty accurate, because Kate and I used to go to Maribyrnong a couple of times each week. And I know we met you and Baig. Yeah, and that's right, and Baron Perrault, that's right. Actually, the thing that really strikes me about Ali, the thing that I cannot get out of my mind, first of all, let me say, very nice of you to say thank you, but it's actually our way of apologising. It's the apology you needed back then, okay? That was our way of apologising. But Ali, we used to see Ali in detention a lot. And then in maybe 2003, all of a sudden, without any warning, he was moved. 2002, okay.
That was to Baxter?
No, to Port Hedland.
To Port Hedland.
Right,
yes.
about as far away as you could
Yes.
get. And the next contact I had from Ali, and this is one of the most striking things that ever happened to me in all of this stuff, is I get a message from Ali, and it's a parcel with a handwritten note. It was a videotape, and the note said, "Dear Julian, this is what I fear, please help me." Just handwritten. I thought, oh shit. So I put the video in the machine and watch it. And it's a video taken in Evin prison in Tehran. And it's got an official Iranian watermark on it, so it's not a dodgy tape. And what it is it's an underground room, roughly this size, and there's 3 groups of people. Over here, there's a group of officials, like 2 or 3 officials, and they're reading out from bits of paper. And over there, there's a bunch of people, there's maybe 5 or 6 of them. They look like maybe they're a family group or something, and they're keeping well away from the officials. And over here is a table, and on the table is a man, and he's lying on his back, and there's a big gent behind his head to make sure he doesn't get up to anything naughty. And mostly the camera's on these official guys, and they're reading out in Farsi. I have no idea what they're talking about. At one point, the camera moves across to the family group, and they're looking pretty alarmed, and it moves across to the guy on the table, and he's looking really worried, and he sits up, and the big guy behind him pulls him down by the shoulders. And then it's back to the guys who are reading out, and they're reading and reading and reading and reading. Then they finish reading, and the camera swings around, and you watch for the next 2 minutes as they take his eyes out with forceps. It was the most horrifying thing I have ever seen. And here's Ali sending me this tape saying, "This is what I fear, please help me." I mean, he's done his dash, he's had a crappy run in the refugee status determination system. And so a few of us sat down and we thought, what can we do about this? And so we put together an application in the federal court which simply said, here's this guy, he's going to be sent back to Iran. If he's sent back to Iran, he's going to be tortured. Australia cannot send a person back to be tortured. The federal government, this is Ruddock and Howard, right? And I'm actually beginning to miss them. Can you believe that? Never thought I'd say that, sorry. Sorry, I get overexcited. And so they take this defence. They say, well, that's as may be, it has no legal consequences. And so the case went up through the court system to the High Court on this footing. This man will be removed from Australia, he will be returned to Iran, he will be tortured on his return, but hey, that's how, who cares? And I remember especially the special leave application in the High Court, because we lost all the way up. In the High Court, we had Gleeson and McHugh, and at one point, Gleeson, no, I think I said to the court, look, if he is removed, and he can be removed and sent back to torture, what are you going to do? And Gleeson said, well, he has to be removed from the country. I said, well, then I suppose if you can't get him back to Iran, you take him beyond the territorial limits and simply drop him in the ocean. And McHugh said, if that's what has to be done, so be it. I couldn't believe it. Special leave was refused. Anyway, in the meantime, things had changed and the government had made its point, and then Ali gets accepted as a refugee. I mean, it's just madness. Madness. I will never, ever forget that note that I got from you. I will never forget that video.
When Ali got his leave, that was August 2004, and just a few days beforehand, I think he received the judgment in another case with a similar kind of history of arguing against, well, really impossible sorts of points of view. That was the Beirut case. They came together very nicely, those two events. They relate in some ways. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, okay. Beirut's actually in...
Well, one points up the silliness of the other, if you like.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Easter 2002, you may recall, there was a disturbance outside the Woomera Detention Centre. A whole bunch of Australian activists protested there. Someone managed to prise apart a couple of the bars of the palisade fence, and quite a few detainees got out. About 60 detainees got out. Almost all of them were immediately captured because there was a phalanx of police around the opening in the palisade fence. But a few people got away. One of them was Beirut. He made it to the first railhead, which was a few kilometres away, but it's incredibly hot, so he just sat there and waited till he was arrested. He was then charged with escaping from immigration detention. And this was like gold, because we had been waiting for the opportunity to argue that the conditions in detention were so dreadful that they couldn't be lawful immigration detention. But of course, there were not then, and there are not now, any rules governing the conditions in detention or the treatment of people in detention, unlike the prison system, which is highly regulated. So we put together a bunch of material about what sort of conditions people experienced in Woomera, and the argument at the Magistrates Court prosecution was whatever he escaped from, it's not immigration detention, because if you legislated to keep people in conditions like this and treat them like this, that would be invalid, and therefore it can't be immigration detention, of which the Act speaks. We lost. Went to the Supreme Court of South Australia, we lost again. Special leave application to the High Court. And it went up on the theoretical question, if conditions in detention are as bad as human wit can devise, will it nevertheless be valid in immigration detention or not? It went up alongside the Al-Khatib case, because the Al-Khatib case raised the question, if a person has been refused a visa and can't be removed because he's stateless, can he stay in detention or not? And at the same time, of course, Ali's about to be dropped in the ocean. And on the same day, in August 2004, the High Court ruled that Mr. Al-Khatib not guilty of any offence, not suspected of being a risk to anyone, could remain in detention for the rest of his life. And they said, terrible conditions in immigration detention don't make it unlawful. It remains constitutionally valid to mistreat people, no matter how shockingly. I don't think I've ever had such an awful trifecta of results. You know, you can be thrown in the ocean, Al-Khatib can stay in detention forever, and Beirut can be treated like a dog. Shocking.
Mm. So that,
Al-Khatib is now an Australian citizen, by the way.
mm. All of those stories, they go to pointing up the difficulties that lawyers face in all of this process, that there's a sort of incoherence that's involved in all of this, isn't there? That it really depends on doggedness.
Yeah, I'm not sure doggedness works, actually. You know, I've been at this for 14 years and we've gone backwards. Sometimes I think I need to turn around and walk the other way. But yeah, you're right. You've got to keep at it because, frankly, it's getting harder and harder to make any headway. Every time something gets up in the High Court, which is rare enough, they tighten the rules. They patch over the gap which has been exposed and things get worse.
But you do still have some successes.
Not many.
Not many.
Not
right.
many, no.
Okay.
And in fact, the big structural problems have almost all been explored. There's one or two we're looking at. But you need a big structural win so as to change the whole game. Winning on a loophole is okay for the individual litigant. It's not very useful for the larger picture because the government just legislates the loophole out.
What was
And the
last...
fact is, you know, as I was discussing earlier, we've got a hopeless opposition who really need to have the guts to stand up and say, this is outrageous, we can't behave like this, is not what Australia is about. But they don't do it. And the whole thing, in my opinion, is because people like you have been called illegal by the Immigration Department, by the Prime Minister, by the Immigration Minister, even though you've committed no offence at all. Even though you're probably escaping the same extremists we're fighting in the Middle East, they call you illegal and they treat you like a criminal. It's terrible. And the one thing the opposition really needs to do is to stand up in Parliament and say plainly, these people are not illegal, they should never be called illegal, they haven't committed an offence, and we are disgracing the country in the eyes of the world by treating people the way we are.
And in other words, integrate the experiences of people like Ali
Yeah.
and Al-Khatib into the whole security discussion that they're having now at the Sydney conference, I suppose is another way of putting it. Ali, just following on Julian's comment, why is it that you personally want to go on telling your story? Because it must be painful to remember those times, to be... And in a way, you must also occasionally want to honour those times by being silent about them. But you have a purpose, don't you?
Look, first thing, there is anger inside ourselves. Anger of taking our life for a long time in detention center. Then I want to make sure many people who still doesn't know anything about this situation since at least 2000 until now, they get more information and being involved with this situation to make solidarity to change something forever. In next 70, 80 years, if some government coming and say, oh, we are sorry to refugee or asylum seeker, like Kevin Rudd did it for Aboriginal, it's not going to do anything. We have to stop this criminal way to treating human being now. It's not really easy to talk about those past problems. I push myself to do it. Sometimes after any interview I have, for a while I have heavy feeling because I usually thinking about what's going on to myself or others. But when I'm talking to someone or some people, it's worse than thinking personality about the past. But still, I'm happy to get my information and whatever I saw inside the reservoir to whoever wants to know exactly what's going on. Some part of my story or some other people's story as well might be read it in future in Behind the Wire. Altogether, it's for us like 1 second of detention center time. But I think I have more than 6 hours interview with my new friend Michael Green.
Yes, the language of moving on or of closure is not a language that's
Useful to you,
Yeah.
is it? Mm. You've actually had a very rich and fulfilling life since 2004, many different aspects. There's your music, your work, a community, and so on, but there is this shadow, as you say, and it's important that people know about that shadow.
Look, since I released, actually before that as well, in detention center, some people, or some friends forced me to see some psychologist or psychiatrist. Whoever I visiting, they said, the story you told us, we never heard about it and we have no experience to do anything about it. The only thing, we can give you some tablet to make you calm down. I refused because by the experience I had inside detention center, what immigration and the security company medical done to my friend, and still they are involved with some horrible medication, I said, no, I don't want any medication. I have to fix my problem with myself. I look at my backside, I find some good memory from when I was in Iran, my childhood, which is I didn't have much childhood because, as I said, 12 years old boy involved with politics. There is no toys, there is no nothing, you know, just being involved with politics. But I have lots of good memory. When I was thinking about my good memory, I didn't have time to thinking about detention center time. I make my feeling very strong, start to be involved with some social group in Melbourne, like Socialist Alliance and Green Left Weekly Paper. Now, personality, I'm happy in normal life. In politics life, I'm really angry person. And again, feel sorry for lots of people going through the torture situation inside and outside Australian detention.
Julian, you also have a commitment to these stories being remembered, told, recorded for the future.
Yeah, I reckon both these projects are absolutely vital because most people do not respond to abstractions. Most people are not really interested in being told, oh, you know, human rights are important, blah, 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 but they do understand stories. If you can tell them a story about what happened to another individual person, then there's a chance that they will respond to that story because they'll be able to understand it. And then as long as we can push back the link between terrorism and fear on the one hand and mistreatment of asylum seekers on the other hand, then there's just a chance that we'll begin to think we shouldn't behave like this. But you know, without telling the stories, I don't see how people are going to understand how shockingly we're behaving. And I really hope that sometime in the future, there will be something like the apology to the stolen generations. It might come too late.
Okay, but let's go to the gathering of testimonies because that's what these two projects are about. How important is it that this gathering is done, and how important is the way it's done and recorded for the future? For example, if there were ever an inquiry.
Well, it's essential that it's done, and I will forever think of Matthew as Madame Defarge. Madame Defarge, in front of the guillotine, you know, knitting.
Don't take up knitting.
Yeah. Okay, Dana is Madame Defarge. You can be Monsieur Defarge, although I don't think he is. It is really important that it is done because it may take a very long time before we get around to acknowledging that what we did was wrong. And when we get to that time, there will at least be undeniable testimony of what actually happened. Testimony taken at the time, saying what was done to people by us. And with luck, a lot of Australians will look back and think, oh golly, that was terrible. I wish we'd known. Well, actually, they did know. But they don't care. And that's perhaps the most awful aspect of this. It seems that when confronted with the facts about what's happening in detention here, in Manus, in Nauru, most Australians do not care. And I'm really thrilled that there are people around like Matthew, like Dana, like Pamela, like Bridget Arthur, who's hiding down there, who have for so long, and Jessie Taylor, it's a pity Jessie's not here, I didn't see her anyway, people who for so long have been working at this because of the simple human need to make sure that injustices are corrected. And I'm sorry for all the other people in the room I haven't named, because I know many of you are heavily involved in all of this, but those people in particular have done remarkable work, and it's really important work that you're doing, because you will bring the stories to light and keep them in front of us until one day we wake up and see that what we're doing has been wrong.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Ali. I think on that note we need to finish, and I'm sorry that it's on such both a positive note but also on a very negative and distressing note. I wish it were otherwise.
Hey, how many good news stories are there in this space? Really?
So, I don't like to think of Australians in quite that way. I have better
Nor
hopes.
do I,
Yes.
nor do I. But don't forget the September 2013 election. Both major parties, active. I mean, imagine if they'd been campaigning on promises to be cruel to animals. Does anyone think that would have worked? They were promising to be cruel to human beings because they knew it would win them government if they did it well. God almighty. I think that's probably the most shameful moment in our history.
Well, gather the stories, tell the
Yeah.
stories. Thank you very
So
much, all of you.
Thank you so much to everybody who came out tonight, and especially thank you to our panel and for your stories. I would like to extend an invitation to anybody in the room who works in this space, of which I know many of you do. If you have a friend, or if you are someone who has experienced mandatory detention and you would like to speak out, please get in touch with us. We would love to create a space for that to happen. Secondly, I would just like to say I think that everybody in the room is of the same mind, that we live in a time where it's very difficult to obtain information in this area, and even more difficult to hear stories from people who are directly affected by these laws, either because they're explicitly silenced or that they're implicitly silenced through intimidation or immigration implications. So for me, stories like this mean that we are creating a place for people to be at the forefront of their own battle, rather than us always being up the front on their behalf, which is extremely important. And on a personal level, as someone who works very closely in this area, as so many of you do, for me it's an incredible experience to read these stories from the beginning to the end, because sometimes you get so used to the awful stories that you hear, and it becomes quite of a normal part of your day to hear some very, very sad and troubling things. But when you hear it in the words of someone who's experienced those things, and you're able to be transported into their shoes, it's something that really shakes off those usual approaches you take to this issue, and it really revitalizes me and reminds me what I'm doing and why, and who are the people that matter. So these stories are so important to be told and to be recorded, but more than ever I encourage you to share these websites, because they are there to be heard by the Australian public. Thank you very much.